across the wire on short notice. Fight Night Picks, we've got your back. We have Tubarao, Joanderson Brito taking on Lucas Alexander out of Fusion XL Martial Arts. And Matt, this is a great matchup here at featherweight. Originally, it was supposed to be Melzik Bogdasarian, a guy whose nickname is The Gun, taking on Brito, but Bogdasarian, I don't know, broke his hand. The magazine fell out. I don't know. Brito is now matched up with a fellow Brazilian training out of the States in Lucas Alexander. And if you've seen Alexander fight in the past, his last time out, he headlined Anthony Pettis Fighting Championships #1. And he got a win over Jacob Kilburn, UFC veteran. Now, for those of you who are uninitiated, Jacob Kilburn had a run in the UFC. And he went outside and he fought in the PFL and he got flying knee knocked out by Brandon Jenkins. It hasn't been all, sun and roses and all of the good things for Kilburn. But if you do look at it for Alexander, he does have an interesting style that I think projects a little bit of longevity in the UFC. It's just the level of competition hasn't been all that great for Alexander on the regional scene. We'll have to see how he kind of acclimatizes himself to that UFC level. But against a guy like Brito, the fight's going to be coming at you. So we'll see if Alexander's able to kind of play out to his strengths. And Matt, we really did focus on it. We talked about this before we started filming because, again, this fight was added on incredibly short notice on Sunday, the Sunday before the fight. So there's no odds on this one just yet. And we'll talk about the Topology votes. There's one giant X factor to Lucas Alexander's game, and it's his leg kicks, and they're great.
And not just his leg kicks, I would say his kicks in general. He has really reactive kicks. He's really good at judging, okay, kick left foot, kick right leg. He's good at switching stances, too, on the back foot. That's the thing. Normally, kicks are only brought in when you're throwing a combination. You want to end it with a kick, end it with something really powerful. Alexander, I almost called him Almeida. Alexander can kick off the back foot, though, and that's a really unique thing to see, and that requires absurd levels of balance to be able to do something like that. This fight, though, more than any other on the card, really comes down to at what range is it going to be contested at? Because if Alexander is able to fight at that really long distance, really long range, be able to use or utilize some of those kicks, he has a good straight right, too, but the thing about his right hand is he doesn't throw it straight, he doesn't throw it in a hook. He throws like this weird up hook. I don't even know how to describe it. It's a very awkward style and it's a very awkward strike, but it does tend to land.
And he does hold his hands kind of low as well, so it's just weird angles where a lot of these strikes come from. And the other thing about him is you look at all of these fights that he's had, and they're not with the bigger promotions. I mean, maybe Anthony Pettis FC will become some giant juggernaut of a promotion. It'll rival all the others. Maybe it'll be the next one championship. But with Combat Night Pro, with Island Fights, I mean, Island Fight's a little bit of an outlier, but his last 3 fights, Combat Night Pro and Anthony Pettis, smaller cages. And with Pettis, it was a circular cage, kind of like Bellator. With Combat Night Pro, it was an octagon style, but they are smaller. And for a bigger guy frame-wise in the featherweight division, he does have a lot of success at judging range and earning it early on in these matchups.
He does, but he's never fought anybody with even an ounce of the explosiveness that Joanderson Brito carries. And that's the weird thing about Brito. Again, even in his last 2 fights, you've kind of got the whole entire experience. If you're really tactical and you can stay on the outside, threaten with your wrestling, and be well-rounded, you can beat Joanderson. If you're hesitant, though, if you're second-guessing yourself, if you're pulling out of exchanges with your chin up, like Andre Feely was, then we kind of know how it's going to end. Like, Brito does embody that John Lineker mindset of, hey, I'm going to try to knock you out or I'm going to lose the decision trying. That's what I really do like out of Brito. But the thing is, he is going to have to find his own Goldilocks zone a little bit better. I like the pace. I like the aggressiveness. And it's not like he falls off a cliff as the fight continues, but he's going to have to find his own Paulo Costa, if you will. Figure out, okay, what is the best fighting pace for me so that I can have those big flurries, but I can also make that, or combine that, I should say, with the longevity to go 3 rounds. And I think if Brito can finally find a way to put those 2 things together, that's when he'll have his sort of Gilbert Burns moment of putting all of his mixed martial arts together and potentially even going on a run. Because I really do think Brito, if you look at his X factors, they're as good as anybody in the division. He is really unique for his ability to close the distance and land his power shots. It's just, is he going to be technical enough to finally be able to get over the hump and fight ranked fighters in the featherweight division? Because I feel like in featherweight and lightweight, more than any other division, it's, hey, you're a top 15 fighter or you're outside of the top 15. You really need to show something spectacular to prove that, okay, I am a ranked fighter and I deserve to be here.
I mean, Brito's kind of like your friend that goes camping, and did he bring the newspaper? Does he have the kindling? Did he chop his firewood just right? Because the guy definitely has that magnesium flint. You throw that down there, you light it, the kid burns hot. Dana White would say that. Now, he burns hot quick, and if you watch his fight over with LFA against Mariscal, he gets in his head right before the fight, and then he ends up finishing him in impressive fashion. You watch his fights on the regional scene, and sometimes he goes balls to the wall very quickly, and then he can lose in some of the grappling exchanges. He had that weird technical decision fight against Diego Lopes that had fought like some big names in and around the UFC, but for Brito, it's going to be the mixing of the martial arts, as you had mentioned. Can he burn hot enough, quick enough, or will he have the lasting power to keep that fire burning throughout the night? And for Lucas Alexander, the other big X factor here, because Alexander is more or less a kickboxer, but he will take the fight down to the mat, and he will waste time up against the cage. And that's the thing that I don't really love in the fights that I've seen. He will take the fight, hold it up against the cage, not really go for takedowns, bring his win back into it, and then I'll go for his takedown. And he goes for naked chokes, but kind of like a guy in AJ Dobson that you're going to see on the next pay-per-view card. He goes for a lot of no-hook rear naked chokes and doesn't really get them. So Alexander's a little fast and loose on the ground, whereas Brito is as well, but he can really bring it together. Obviously, you see the size difference between these two guys. Again, for Alexander, level of competition, Kilburn was 8-6 at the time, then 6-4 Ty Johnson, 3-1 Reginald Mack II, Carlos Guerra, who was 3-2, 6-7-1 Jeremias Fernandez. Like, not really a good level of competition on the regional scene. But when it does come down to this one, Matt, we'll go off the Tapology vote. Surprise us, they are to you. And there's going to be a really limited sample size. Again, I think Alexander has a frame and a style that could be conducive to more than one fight in the UFC. Like, Yoshinori Horii only got one.
Alexander has one of those styles where he could win his first 4 fights by knockout, he could lose his first 4 fights by knockout. Like, it's really as simple as that.
I'll say over-under 90% Brito in this one.
I'll say under.
You're going to say under? It's slightly over. 235 votes for those tried and true Tapology fans. The 92% that have Brito, 70% by knockout for the 8% that have Alexander, 39% by decision, 44% by knockout. I think Joanderson Brito is going to have success in closing the range. It's just, can Alexander open up, find his range, throw his kicks, and then those long-range, odd-angle punches that he has. He could really stifle a guy like Brito. Bill Algeo was able to have success on the feet against Brito, so the game plan is there if he can stuff some of the takedowns as well. But I think Brito is going to have success with his aggression and his takedowns, and I think you're going to have a Brito win here this weekend.
If Alexander can halt some of the forward pressure up Brito, then maybe he can have success with some of his kicks and with some of his open range striking. I still think that's going to be the case. I think Brito's going to be able to explode into range quite a bit in this matchup. Now, will he be able to get a finish? That's really hard to predict, but I really do like his power punches on the inside, especially against a longer, rangier guy who I think might even struggle at that range once Brito is able to get on the inside of his punches and his kicks. So I think Joanderson should be able to put on a really good showcase this weekend.
Brito is getting ready for a kickboxer, Melzik Bagdasarian. Now he gets a striker in Lucas Alexander. Both of us going with Brazil's Joanderson Brito to get the win in the matchup. Let us know, because again, this one's on really short notice. We want to hear from you in the comments section. Maybe you saw something out of the tape study when you were watching Lucas Alexander that we didn't pick up on. We'd love to hear from you either way. Keep the comments a-flowing. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.